Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Creative Careers, where we interview people from all over the place who are working on all different kinds of arts and making that a part of their career. And today, we're going to go ahead and welcome our guest. Thank you for joining us, Benjamin Fincher.
Glad to be on the show, Hannah.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's start off by just getting a sense of what do you do? What is the artwork that you do?
Yeah, so I actually work as a stained glass artisan. So, you think about classically, one of the only places people have ever thought to look for this is like in cathedrals, right? Like medieval cathedrals and other stuff. But it's really interesting how prevalent it is in our world. And you never notice until you really get into that sphere or you've developed an interest in it. And so, like you'll find it in residential, you'll find it in business, you'll find it in public places, aside from just religious places where our minds almost automatically go to when thinking about it.
Interesting. So tell us, how did you get here? Because you're right, people don't always think of stained glass as being something outside of these big elaborate cathedrals. So how did you get here? How did you get interested in it? How did you get connected to this?
Yeah, so I live about 20 minutes away from the particular studio I work at. And it was interesting, like just about, 6 to 8 months ago, I was looking for a job and I was looking around, I'm just like, okay, not interested in that, not interested in that. And I've had, like 8 different jobs already, and I'm only 24. So I've had a fair share of, well, I don't enjoy this. Let's find the next thing. And as I was looking for jobs, my dad just forwarded me this thing that he saw on Facebook with, he was actually friends with the owner of the studio. And he says, hey, these guys are hiring. Are you interested? I'm like, wait a second. Yes, 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 yes. I want this. Yes, absolutely. Let's go here.
So this wasn't necessarily something that you had done before. This was something that, coming into this job, this was brand new to you.
No, I mean, I had an interview at the place a year and a half before I had the interview because I had a friend that worked there. And, they gave us I was in a book club and they gave us a tour. But besides that, I really had no experience with anything with stained glass.
It's really interesting. Were you interested in other aspects of art, or was this coming into something where you necessarily didn't even consider yourself an artist and now found yourself creating these beautiful pieces?
Yeah, so I consider myself creative. And in some respects, I do consider myself an artist, although I don't consider myself like a spectacular artist. This is nowhere near my finest piece. Is actually probably one of the bottom 5 that I actually took home, but this is a piece of pottery I did. I took a class for that one semester when I was high school aged. This is actually a lot better example of something that was actually neat and useful. So, I did pottery in the past. I've done 1 or 2 classes on, painting and just general art mediums. And so I did, like sketches and acrylics and watercolors and whatnot. But nothing was even ever mentioned about stained glass in that class. At least if it was, I didn't actually register it and record it in my memory. It was just
Yeah, no, that's really fascinating. So I'd love to hear what you said you think of yourself as a creative person. I firmly believe that everybody has some creativity in them. It has the possibility of being an artist in them. So I'd love to
oh yeah.
hear, what do you like about this? Does it let you express your creativity? Does it let you hone it? What do you like about this?
Yeah, so one of the things I like about this particular job being a stained glass artisan is and as I'm saying this, I keep thinking of the project we're doing right now, which has been a trudge. But in general, it allows me to switch from one thing to another, which, for a lot of creative people is usually a key factor in their line of work. Is they're like, I don't want to be focused on one thing too long. I need to be able to go here and there and the other place. And I'm undiagnosed, but fairly certain I have ADHD, so that would help explain that. but it's like, okay, I can do this and I can do this and I can do this, because it's the whole process. You get the glass sheet, it's about what, 3 feet by 3 feet, 4 feet, something like that. And you cut out the particular shape you need, and then you get it exactly the right size by grinding it. And then you put it onto the pattern, and once all the pieces are there, then you start putting it together with either your lead came or your copper foil. And then once that's all done, then you solder it all together, and then you just finish up the process by sticking the frame around it and everything. But the particular place I work, you jump in from one thing to the other depending on the day, except for this project we're working on currently, where it's just very much the same every day, which can get tedious. Cool windows, but it's a repair. So we're taking what someone else has done and saying, okay, let's make this how it should have been in the first place.
Yeah, no, I like that. The idea of this gives you a lot of different things to do. And I think you're right. A lot of creative people really do kind of latch on to that. So as somebody coming into this brand new with no like stained glass experience before, what were some of the skills that you really, really had to work on to get to the level where you're at now, and maybe what you want to continue working on?
Yeah, so for the job, I had to be able to understand, okay, this is how the tools work to be able to cut the glass, which is actually not cutting, it's breaking the glass with style. Because you get the piece of glass, and I wish I had some to show you, but the only glass I have is in the pieces that I have, but that's dramatic value of showing it near the end. But you get the piece of glass, and it's like what, a 1/4 inch thick, and you score it with this tool that has a wheel on it, and it's not sharp, but it's abrasive, where there's weakness. So then you can control the break by saying, okay, we're breaking it here, and then you use your other tools to break that particular piece off, and then you cut all the curves. However the pieces are, geometric shapes are a lot easier usually. And then you get all that, and my mind just completely lost track of what the question was.
Totally
so
fine. Totally fine. The question is the skills that you had to learn, the skills you had to learn to get better.
So how to be able to utilize the tools correctly in that sense. And then, with the soldering, how to solder correctly, because, you can get giant globs of solder onto a joint, and that doesn't look good. It waste solder. It can actually be a liability for the glass, because if it's sitting on the glass, then if that glass is trying to move around, all of a sudden that's creating a pressure point. Not good, because glass likes to break. So, if you're going to think about doing stained glass, solder work is probably one of the best things, but we're not talking electrical soldering either. So, yeah, that was one of the key skills to learn there. And then a lot of the rest of it is just kind of seeing how it's done, and, monkey see, monkey do, and learn how to do it, and, get better. It's a learning process, just like any type of artwork. It was funny, last night I actually did a sketch for the first time in years, because the owner wants to make a birthday present for his wife, or not a birthday, an anniversary present. And he's like, hey, whoever wants to can create a thing, and we'll see what we can do to help you guys, but this would be super cool. And so I'm just like, okay, I could do that. And I'm like, well, I have the grades of pencils, but how do I use these again? So that's a skill I've not practiced in a while. But with stained glass, there's all those sorts of different skills.
Yeah, that's cool though, because it's not just about putting it together, but you're getting to have a little bit of a hand in the design process as well, and the actual, figuring out what it's going to look like in the end. That's very cool.
Yeah. And come to think of it, there's another skill that normally I don't do at work, which is why I was overlooking this one, but is essential, like literally arguably one of the most important skills there, is the guy who picks the glass. Because you have this thing, and let's say you're trying to replicate a painting or a picture or whatever scene you're trying to come across as, if you put blue where the trees are, okay, you better make sure that that's the right color blue. Or if you put red where the trees are, you better hope it's supposed to be a fall scene. If you put brown where the trees are, you maybe straighten off. Trees is a very bad example for this. They come in many colors, but if you're trying to create so many natural things have so many different colors. If you're trying to go for the look of the ocean, generally you need a blue or a green. Or if you're trying to go for a particular landscape, you need to follow what that looks like in the piece that I've created on my own from start to finish. And I'll show you that here in a minute. I gained a huge appreciation for what that guy does, because as he put it once, it's basically painting with dried paint.
Wow, I like that. So I'd love to, this will be a last question that I'd love to see some of the work you wanted to show. So if there's a student watching this who is thinking, this sounds really interesting. This sounds like something that maybe I might be interested in doing. What would be something that you'd recommend that they could do from home now, to prepare themselves for a possible future as a stained glass artisan?
That is a very good question. I think, if possible, the best thing is to go to her studio, because that's where you're going to get the hands-on. How does this actually look? Because like almost every art, you really, you can look up about it, but to actually get their hands on, there's no replacement for that. There's no equivalent. You can make a million YouTube videos, and there's nothing like actually going, touching the glass, touching the tools, touching glass. Don't cut yourself. But like getting there and actually seeing it in person, there's no replacement for that. So if possible, go to her studio. If not, and I haven't actually looked up, but there's probably YouTube videos or different things online that you can find. And if you need to have somebody help you to navigate the internet, or if you're savvy, but there's stuff online, I'm certain, and maybe even just looking at examples of stained glass windows, and sometimes the whole broad picture and sometimes the closer up. And actually, this is kind of interesting, but maybe even the manufacturers for stained glass, their websites, that one just occurred to me. I think that would actually render some interesting results, because I'm certain they have educational stuff on there. A couple examples of names of glass manufacturers is you have Kokomo, you have Wismach, you have Yogigini, which is like Yogi the bear, but with an H, and then like the second half of the word mahogany, so Yogigini. Oceanside, Lambert's is antique glass from Germany, which is really cool stuff. Armstrong, I think Armstrong might be another one. But anyway, those other ones are the more common types that we use, at least. As for any other studio, I couldn't tell you. I don't know. But yeah, I haven't been to those sites, but I would be willing to bet that they have stuff on their websites that would help you figure out more.
Yeah, and I know we were talking before the show that you also have resources that you think might be useful for students who maybe are interested in pursuing an artistic future.
Yeah, so like I said, I am creative, and one of the things I do creatively is, like you, Hannah, I run a podcast, and the title of that is How to Rewrite Your Stars. Basically, how to chart your own course in life, how to take control of the steering wheel of your life. And you can find that by going to my website, starlightmentoring.com. That's one word, no hyphens, no nothing, just starlightmentoring.com. Or just find it on whatever podcast app you use, and talk about a lot of things there to be able to help you. And especially for younger people, very useful to be able to say, hey, what are these older people's experiences? What could I go and avoid, or what could I go and do? And chart your path how you want to.
Love that. So before we go, I would love to see you. You teased us a couple times about seeing some of the pieces that you're working on. I would love to see that before you go.
Yeah. So this window I'm about to show you is actually the training window that they have us do at the studio I work at. And a lot of what they want to see with this is your capacity to learn the skill and to be able to cut the pieces and put it all together as well as follow instructions. So that is this.
That's awesome. I love that it's a training piece because it looks elaborate. So you look
Yeah,
at it, you're like, whoa.
in a lot of ways it is. The funny thing is those center pieces, the blue ones around the gold piece, you'd think those are the hardest and they can be tricky, but it's actually, in my experience at least, these pieces were the hardest because of this tight curve here.
Oh yeah.
Because it's the inside curves that
Interesting.
kill your pieces of glass, especially with a small little point like they have. But so that's the training piece. And I had one of the guys there as he came and looked at it, he's like, that's a quilt work piece of stained glass. And I was confused at the time, and then I saw everyone else's windows. But I like it. I like it. And then this is a personal piece that I did, and this is of a actual geographic or geological formation in Utah called Delicate Arch. And if you want to see how, oh, I'm holding this backwards. Yes, no, yes, no, I'm holding that the right way. Never mind. It's mirrored in my camera, which is why I was like, wait a second. But yeah, so this is one that I just told them like, hey, I would love to create my own piece. And they're like, okay, just pay for the glass and the materials and you're good. And so in my own time after, off the clock, I did that. And that's where I gained the appreciation for picking the pieces, because, some of those pieces, you might be like, oh, that one's actually pretty hard to pick, but it's actually the background pieces were the hardest, because it's like, okay, all these other ones are calling attention. How do I not call attention and still get how this looks? So, yep, those are the couple pieces I've done myself.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I really loved seeing those. And I'm sure there are going to be some students who watch this and think, ooh, I want to learn how to do that too. So hopefully they'll be able to make that happen. Thank you so much for joining us today, Benjamin. This was really great.
You are welcome. Glad to be on.
All right, folks, thank you so much for checking this out. Don't forget to come back at 3:30 next Tuesday for another Let's Be Creative video. We'll see you then.